After the resounding presentation from David,
I mean,
I just have to say, let's all remember and celebrate that we're a nation of immigrants.
Yeah, and David makes me proud to be part of this organization. So, yeah, it's great.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have to offer more introduction than the introduction we just had.
Right.
So I think we want to quickly get to questions, but I would offer just two thoughts. First of all, the core network and all of you should celebrate yourselves and the tremendous work that you do every day. My experiences, particularly in urban forestry and the like, demonstrated not only the value of that collaboration and cooperation, but the important value that it brings to communities, to cities, a sense of pride and appreciation for the good work of its citizens, and a cleaner and healthier environment. And I think we all should recognize, humbly, how important it is that we're able to do that work and hopefully extend and expand that work. And certainly, as we heard earlier today, the initiatives of the Biden administration and administrations before are building a foundation for allow us to continue to expand that work. So it's something I think about and something I look forward to seeing us capitalize on even more in the future. Anything you want to say, honey?
As opening comments? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So Jim and I actually met working on Capitol Hill a long time ago. I worked for my Congressman, Leon Panetta. I had gone to high school in Santa Cruz County. I know there's a big California presence. Yeah. A little town called Aptos, if you know it. Yeah, Santa Cruz. Yeah. And I was really lucky because and that's how Jim and I met, because Jim was working at the House Agriculture Committee as committee staff. That was like a big deal. I was just like the Capitol Hill receptionist in the office, and he was like a big committee staffer. But he worked for Leon in that capacity, and that's how we actually met. But we were really lucky Leon was my first boss, so I worked for him in Capitol Hill, and then he went to when Bill Clinton was elected president, he was the budget director, and then he was White House chief of staff, and I was like, okay, he asked me to be his assistant when he was White House chief of staff, and I was like, I'm too senior for that. I'm 26 years old. I'm like a legislative policy person, and he was just like, oh my God, number one, get over yourself. Number two, I just need somebody who knows what they're doing to do this job. Be my scheduler assistant for 6 months, and then we can revisit it. And I did it for 2.5 years, and it was like the best learning experience I ever had, right? Because there's, first of all, you're like right in the center of the West Wing, and really understanding how politics comes together, how you get things done, how you communicate. Like I just really intuited it all there. And then, but I was lucky to work for someone like Leon, who I also worked for a long time for John Podesta, another, as I said to Bruce Saito, another Italian-American chief of staff. Sometimes I get them conflated in my mind. But these are people, I worked for John for probably 10 years, people who really, public servants who really loved government, really saw the good that it could do. I didn't know that I was on the back end of that, like sort of riding that wave of government as a good force that was accomplishing things. I thought we would continue to progress, right? And I worked for President Obama's White House communications director there, and it started to get difficult in the Obama years. Just things more entrenched, politics more difficult, fewer people voting, fewer people thinking it mattered. And then I went, and that was sort of concerning. You're like, what direction are we going in? And then I went to work on the Clinton campaign, and this is a bad thing about working in the White House, is you don't actually leave Washington, or if you do, you leave in the bubble of like Air Force One. It's like the snow globes. That's kind of like when you travel with the president. It's kind of, it's like the akin to like being in a snow globe. You're like sort of looking around, but you don't actually get a feel for what's happening? And then when I got out into the country working for Hillary, I was like, wow, there was just so much alienation, disaffection, people feeling like government didn't matter, people feeling like government couldn't work, inequality growing, not really, we hadn't dealt with the effects of globalization. And there was so much, understandable anger. And it was also too late to do anything about it. You're like, oh, we are walking into this buzzsaw. And I thought that, and I tried to talk about political situation without being partisan. Obviously, I worked for Hillary, so where I ended up on that equation. But when she lost, I had seen this already, but I thought, like, all of politics is just broken. Like, everything, polling, I hate polling. I hate polling when people do polls about messages, what messages work. I hate that. I like authentic messages. When you're talking about your core, you shouldn't worry about what language to use. You should talk about why it's important to you. Because if you get to, think about some of the music you like, no matter what kind of music it is, the lyrics resonate with you, even when they're really specific and not something that you've experienced, the details, but you know what it feels like. And when someone has a lot of passion and they're explaining their passion, you're gonna connect to that. People are gonna connect to that. And so I just, as in terms of talking about, so that's why I don't like polling. I like things that grow organically. But I had the thought, the democracy is either gonna be dead or it's gonna get revitalized from the ground up, right? Which is a long introduction of saying, why I'm here, because I do see in the almost 8 years since that election, very difficult time in our country still, really divided, but I do see hope on the ground, both in terms of young people voting more than ever and getting involved in organizations like this. That there's also, I think that there is also something very true about when you are working on the land that is unifying or helps at least get over divides, because you can't ignore the impacts that you're having on the land. You can't say it's not happening or it's not there. It's a way to come together in some kind of ground truth. But then also, because it's young people doing the work, I think that's something that America can rally behind and respect, and that you are the best messengers of your work. The big thing that I think is lacking in the country, two big things lacking in the country: trust and community. And you have both. There's so little faith in institutions. It's interesting because I, look at this. One of the few institutions that still has people have faith in are their unions. If you work in a union, they have faith in their union, that their union actually has their back. It's the most important thing possible to have somebody's trust, and they have to protect that. You all have trust in your community because of the work that you do for the community that you are working in. That is a really valuable commodity, not just to talk about and grow the work that you're doing and get more attention for it, but to just also show that community and trust can work. And I think that, that's a big part of sort of revitalizing the democracy. So that's a little, I go from, super inside Washington politics, then, for the last 8 years, stepped out of it, decided to write, that kind of thing, but then coming back around to work like this that I feel brings the best of what's lacking in the country, and the work that you do that can, and I think, and we could talk some more about how you advocate for it and talk about it and highlight it, because I think there's you're in a good position to do that, particularly now with so much money available to the federal government and so much focus on it.
So I'll just make a few comments and we can open up the questions. I was asked to describe or discuss some of the keys to success. Yeah. I think this applies to both of us, but I can summarize it very quickly based on my experiences. and I started from pretty humble roots. Fort Lee, New Jersey. Father who was a cop and a carpenter because he didn't make enough money at either to get by. And I got to work for 2 presidents. So it's pretty cool. So the things I learned over that period of time, for what it's worth, I learned to be willing to take risks, responsible risks, not jump off a cliff risks, but responsible risks. I learned the value of building relationships. I too got a chance to work with John Podesta in several iterations. He was Senate Ag Committee staff working on natural resources when I was House Ag Committee staff. The final Farm Bill was based on the House legislation, I would point out. But I learned a lot from John, and we continue to work together. I learned how important it is to try to find common ground. And I think that's one of the things that's lacking right now in communities, in the Congress, and elsewhere. A willingness to give a little bit to get something, it seems to me, is a more responsible approach to doing business, and hopefully we'll get there. I learned the value of celebrating successes. People put a lot of time and effort and energy into things. And so from the people who do the clerical work to the people who are out there making the speeches and trying to drive home a message, everyone deserves to be recognized for what they contribute to the things that we do. Success is not something that one single person is ever responsible for, from my experience. And I'm sure you see that in your corps. And that's one of the values of being in a corps and working together. And finally, related to that is sharing in the glory based upon that success, recognizing the value of what you've achieved, working with the community so that they not only appreciate what you've done, and I'm sure most communities see that often, but they share in the accomplishment because you've designed the project, you've worked with them, and hopefully celebrated the success of what you've achieved together. It seems to me those are critical elements to success, at least I think my experience and Jen's as well. It makes a difference, and let's hope we can all see more focus on collaboration, coordination, and shared success in the future. With that, I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah.
So,
and while you're thinking of questions, I'll say one thing about how I think if you want to communicate around the work of the corps to try to get, now that there's money and attention and a lot of great work, I think, sometimes people say with communications, should you do a top-down approach? Like, are you going with, getting President Biden to do an event with a corps, or or a very senior Republican, versus bottom up, which I think is, particularly the corps members on your own social channels telling stories and sort of building the most compelling reasons for why to have the corps and why to join one is the stories that you all have to tell about it. That's a great way of collecting, of influencing, recruiting, influencing peers, and building a long-term case for why the corps is important. But I think in this case, you just do all of the things. I'm very much in all of the above. So it is. Right now, politics is super difficult right now. It's super divided. It's hard, particularly at the federal level, with sometimes with members of Congress or senators. If this is because Biden's in charge right now, and the words climate and core came out of his mouth, the State of the Union. If it's viewed as some Republicans may view it as a Biden thing. A lot of them, some won't, right? And you don't need a lot. But I would try to get. And again, I think the corps members are the best advocates for this. Support at the local level, council member. I mean, some of the best elected officials right now are at the the grassroots level, local level, because I think people have been inspired to run for office. I also am a big believer in young people running for office with zero experience. You should just go ahead and do it and get in there and start having your impact. But you will find champions they're there to be found if you go and look for them, and they will be thrilled to know about the work you're doing. You will also get some people, some blank stares, but you will find a champion. And so I would, whether that's, so it's local, there's like state representatives. We have some phenomenal, we live in near Annapolis, we have some phenomenal local and state representatives newly elected after 2018 that like really care about the community and would be good boosters. If you can get bipartisan support, great. And then, if not, when you've run out of room on that, but I would pursue all of those options. That's when, and alongside of it, you're telling your own stories, you're making sure people know. I think as much signage as possible in the projects is a real, for the people that can do that, that is a really important thing. Signage in national parks where people are visiting, for people to know there's so much work happening in America today, and I feel optimistic about the 20-year trajectory we're on, particularly with all the investments that have been made. But no one understands that's happening for a reason, right? So to try to identify that as much, but your own stories on your own channels is, I'm just like a huge believer in, particularly for the long-term success of the program.
As former communications director, I would expect nothing less.
Thanks, baby.
Okay. Questions back there?
I think somebody's gonna move my microphone.
Oh, is that okay?
So Jim, you mentioned achieving common ground.
Yeah.
Think Purple Rain, right? Got a deep red, a deep blue, and we come together in an area, a rural, urban youth coming into a rural ag community. What are your thoughts? Doing land work, making change, but it's rural ag community. Strengths and weaknesses there.
Is there a state? Or is this a hypothetical, or is there a specific state?
Wisconsin.
Yeah, okay. So I have found, this is because of Jim, I've gotten involved, I'm on the board here, and I've gotten involved, and I watch a lot of collaborative conservation work that he does, particularly in Montana. And what I find is that people, you will find the person in the group that is open to you being there and respectful, and you're going to form a bond with them. That's just how humans are. And I find, with my work on the Circus, for example, I go to a lot of Trump rallies, and a lot of the people there are very suspicious of the press, and I want to talk to them. So I go up and I'll say, "Look, hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm a Democrat. I worked for Hillary Clinton." I am here because I'm trying to understand. I want to understand where you're coming from, and almost always, not every time, but almost always, I got a good reaction because they were like, "Oh, I trusted them to not freak out," right? I trusted them with something that could be in a sea of 10,000 people, could be a tough thing to say. And then they're more candid with you and more open with you. And so I find, and then same thing, I'm everyone who is on the board with me of the Core Network has heard me talk about it, but I'm joined the board of this group, Women in Ranching, which is, Jim got me to go to a retreat with them in Broadus, Montana. If anybody knows Montana, this is
An 8-hour drive from the capital.
An hour and 45 minutes on an unpaved road.
We thought we were in the Dakotas by the time we got
110 degrees, no air conditioning, very pretty conservative community. And Jim dropped me off with no self-service. I was like, "I'll see you in 4 days." But I find, and they, a couple women knew my background, the rest of them didn't. But I was there and I was willing to listen, and people will surprise you. They will, so if you're going in, sounds like there's cultures clashing there, but I do find being open, sharing everything, so you're not trying to pull any punches, and then people will respect that, they will welcome that, and you will find the connection. And I found it with almost everyone, but certainly within, certain groups. That's your experience with collaborative conservation, right? Like the Blackfoot Challenge.
I call it baptism by immersion. It's kind of dive in. the opportunity presents itself, and get a sense of what the community would like to see happen, and share with them what you can do to help them realize their goals and dreams. And my experience, Casey Trees is a great example, in Washington, D.C. We would go into neighborhoods, whether it was Anacostia, which is predominantly a black neighborhood, or areas that were predominantly wealthy and white. You just sit down with people and say, you know, we're here to help you regreen your community. And pretty soon, everyone wanted to pitch in. And it makes a big difference. But that,
But you're listening to what they want.
You're listening to what they want, and
the immersion is the important part.
Yeah, no, it's just the open communication that makes all the difference in the world.
We can claim lots of benefits from core involvement. For example, we can say we take kids that didn't have a good educational experience, and we can get them routed towards a GED and maybe on to other kinds of things. We can talk about our contributions to the mental health of a generation that is suffering from COVID and screen time and lots of other kinds of things, and give them something where they can be proud of what they accomplish. And that's a big part of mental health, is to feel I'm doing something good. You can connect them to kids that are different than they are. You know, it's great to talk about DEIJ in just sort of an abstract term, but when you're really working as part of a core, that where you come from different areas of the country, or you have different ethnic backgrounds, and all those kinds of things. But I think sometimes we confuse our potential champions because we claim all these attributes, and they're saying, yeah, but what's really at the essence? I guess part of it is, what's the best thing we can offer to an elected official, whether it's a local official or a state legislator or a governor or a member of Congress? Is it getting them out where we're working and showing them our passion and letting them bring the media behind them, because that's what they're paid to do? They have press secretaries and they have other kinds of things that, I mean, give us some advice in terms of how we actually sell our best qualities over the course of this summer, which is really critical. I think we want to start to build those bridges with people, saying we're part of a reconnected America. We're part of America that believes that we can work in bipartisan ways in many areas, on many issues.
Right. I think it's going to be, let's use an example. I think it's going to be, I have Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut on my brain because my niece works for him, and we just had dinner with her last night, so he's on my brain. So he's running for re-election this year. He doesn't have much re-election. He represents Connecticut. I mean, I would say, okay, what does Chris Murphy care about? Chris Murphy cares a lot about mental health. So, like, first of all, figure out, like, you have a lot ways in. It used to be with communications, you had one message and you drove that one message all the time, and you don't have to do that now because everything is so segmented. The good news is you can deliver a certain message you can deliver one message to one audience, a different message to a different audience, and you don't have to worry about that means that you're not gonna break through, like the way we worried about that in the 90s. So I would find out I know Chris Murphy cares a lot about mental health, so I would approach it, say, we have a core, they're doing work in this part of Connecticut, and you should know a benefit is mental health, and we would love for you to come. I mean, visuals are really important for elected officials. It's hard, anytime the work, all of your projects are going to be great visuals, and they never get that. They just get, ballrooms and meetings. That's usually what they're dealing with. So that is going to be something outside and appealing and looking is going to be appealing for them. They can try to bring press, but I would, if they can announce something, that's going to be better. So if it's like, we want you to see the work we're doing, and then we'd like to do a conversation with you with 5 of our core members and talk to you about about how this is benefiting mental health, and have someone from a mental health community agency there that's part of it. And we're going to announce that within our core we're doing, and make something up. It doesn't really matter, but you can just make something up. Like, we're gonna we're launching a new program, and it's probably the work you've been doing already, but we're launching this new thing, and then it's something for them to grab onto and for the press to grab onto. So it just sort of depends on, and I would look at each of do a little work on the researching the elected officials. This is a very appealing thing for them to do. They will want to do this, and if you can concoct a news hook, like a new program or something you're launching, and then connect it to something that they already care about or they're responsible for, I think you'll get them.
I think the cores now have a tremendous advantage and opportunity in that, per the panel we had just before the break, you've got all kinds of resources and a commitment to utilize those resources to try to address a wide range of issues. Sure, it's couched in climate change, and that offends somebody and some people. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's real. But it's not just addressing climate change. It's regreening neighborhoods. It's bringing communities together. It's providing, and cleaning up open space. It's a whole host of things that can benefit that community. So, if climate change is not the right hook, look for what that is. What's going to create the appeal? Because the benefits...
Maybe if it's like a county executive or a mayor or something, they may be worried about finances. So it's like, this is saving money somehow. So they might connect to that, understand what their vulnerabilities are and what they're interested in.
Well, and I think as well, I've yet to run into... Well, I've run into a few, but I was going to say I've run into many people who object to the training that's provided to youth and the opportunities to learn skills and to contribute to their community. People respect that. People appreciate that. And I think, to the extent that that is part of the message as you engage in projects and activities, it helps. And my experience has been as well, once you do one project in a community, others in the community are like, oh, I can get that done for me.
Totally.
And that that's the way to build, a business. Obviously, we're in the nonprofit world, but, a business, in essence, of regreening these communities. And, lastly, I'll say, some people, as I've alluded to, are offended by the notion of climate change. It's become this political battle. You don't have to go into a community and talk about climate change. You can do things that are going to address climate change. But regreening communities, protecting open space, restoring watersheds, providing more opportunities for outdoor recreation. The tools that we use as a community are their vegetation, their, replanting, they're things that are going to help the environment and certainly are going to help to mitigate climate change. And that's the benefit. So, I fight hard to make sure people don't get hung up on labels.
Yeah, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I also think you should call yourselves whatever you want to call yourselves, and you should describe yourselves however you want to describe yourselves. And if climate doesn't work for you where you live, don't use it. Call yourself something else. And I also really do believe the reason why you're there is going to resonate with someone else. And then Megan Smith, who's here, where are you, Megan? Here she is. I don't know. Do people understand what a rock star Megan Smith is? Because she's a big deal. She put in my brain data science and how you can, in this work, a lot of this work is happening outdoors. Add data, a level of data science into it. Wow, that really expands what the core members are getting out of is very relevant to the digital natives of Gen Z, but. Do you know what any of that meant?
Yes.
Do you know what okay. I was like, does he know do you know what a digital native is? Okay.
Is that anything related to Native Americans?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. Yeah, Megan,
I can share a really cool example for people. So my name is Megan. I got to work with Jen in the White House. That was amazing. I'm also on the board of the Earth Conservation Corps here in D.C. So Nora runs it. We have the pump houses here in D.C. They're decommissioned, and now they are youth environmental centers. So find old spaces where you are and recommission them for youth spaces. The specific thing you're talking about, one of the things I advise is called indigegenius. Native American computer scientists working with their youth, for example, Lakota AI summer camps. So the example you just gave, the kids are, just like a self-driving car does image work, They take their phone and they work with elders and they can recognize medicinal plants. They can recognize things. They can work on, hey Siri, why don't you speak Ojibwe? Why don't you speak Seneca? Why don't you speak Mohawk? And I can do that, and in fact, I can use data sovereignty so my tribe can own it and not Duolingo. So that's really happening. And so there's an opportunity that I would share with all of you, if anybody wants to do it, that this is one of the most powerful networks, this core network. Each of you in your communities are extraordinary. And so if we did two things, one, use the concepts of community practice and the tech we have for basic Zoom-like rapid sharing of what we have, which we did a lot with Computer Science for All, Tech Hire, all these programs where someone in the country had already fixed something and they could speak and tell other people, and we did that regularly, like weekly, not every year or so. So that's an option. And the second one is, why shouldn't we think about data science, environmental data science storytelling, GIS storytelling, as a core member skill that we could teach, so that most of the people in our country stop thinking that computer science is only for, restaurant delivery or self-driving cars or robotics, but it's for whatever we need to achieve. And we also, as we do that, might be able to bring more of the values from this part of the network in our country into technology, because they're sorely missing from some of the stuff that we're seeing from my colleagues in Silicon Valley. So it's a real opportunity. If people want to team up on that, I'd be interested in helping anyone do that.
She kind of created Google, so she knows what she's doing. So, and it just also made me think too that in terms of getting your core's attention, getting attention for your core, partners, community partners, just like that's always great too, right? So if there's another community and organization that you're aligned with, or that might make it more appealing for that member of Congress, particularly if that member of Congress might be a Republican and might be worried about some aspect of, you could maybe partner with someone else, and then that makes it, puts it in a different, expands the appeal.
Yes, right there.
Good evening, thank you for being here. So, from somebody that's not Falls, DC, from far away from here, the amount of
Where are you from?
From Colorado.
Okay.
And trying to manage a program, just the amount, not even policy, but the amount of chaos that is happening in Congress right now is very disruptive. Trying to plan for a government shutdown every 3 months, and not policy was notwithstanding, just the dysfunction that's happening. So I guess I'm wondering, A, if that's a message we can start to share or is being shared, or anybody walking in the hallways, up on the Hill, realizes how much just the inability to do the job that they're hired to do or selected to do is affecting all of us. And I think our stress levels and how to communicate that, if that's something that we can possibly communicate. And I think a second part, two-part, how much do we just learn to live? How much is this here to stay? And how much?
That's yours, honey.
Hope?
Okay. So I think it's actually, I'm an optimist, and I actually had this counterintuitive view or unconventional view that I think things are getting better because in DC, because nothing's actually shut down in a while. I think the last shutdown was 18 or 19. And even though the Republicans are in charge of the House, Democrats are in charge of the Senate, and we get close, it doesn't actually happen. And it doesn't happen because Democrats and Republicans vote together to keep the government open. They voted together to avoid a debt limit debacle. They voted together to pass bipartisan infrastructure bill. I think they voted together to vote the CHIPS and Science Act. That might have just been Democrats. But the point is, there are Democrats and Republicans in Congress that are working together, and I think particularly if the Republicans have a bad election in 2024, not to be partisan, but I just think that if they do, then the Republicans in their party that do want to work with Democrats will have more power, and I think it will become even more normal as opposed to more polarized.
Yes.
So there's that. I think that you saying that message, hey, this is what I do for a living. And I'm trying to do good in the world and do good here in Colorado. And it's really hard when I can't plan because you guys can't get it together. It's a really effective message for, I don't know, like you remember, or Congress it is, or even with your local media. I think that you are a great messenger for that, because people they think in terms of like the Social Security Administration or, bureaucracies in DC. They don't think that it's affecting people like you. And so I think that with your elected officials, excuse me, that can matter. That can matter for all of these, people that work in that.
So,
Sorry.
time for me to say something. Just 2 points on that. I think when a community sees people in the community trying to help resolve issues, fix problems, do things in an environmental context like tree planting, et cetera, I think that breaks down barriers, and that's a big help. I would also share with you, though, and I have a former student who chairs a rather important committee in the House related to these issues. Great guy, who will remain nameless for now. Anyway, he and I talk from time to time, and his frustration with the inability to get anything done is incredibly high. And I wouldn't say he's as liberal as me, but he certainly cares about the environment, he cares about natural resources. It's why he does what he does. But, he confides in me honestly. He's like, Jim, I have to take the votes that I have to take, or I'm going to lose my chairmanship. And it's just kind of that period of time when those things happen. I actually had one experience, as an aside, where I was testifying before his committee. Actually, it was before a committee that deals with these issues. He was on the committee, but he was not chair of the committee. And he happened to be out of the room, and the chairman of the committee assaulted me on some issues, et cetera, et cetera. And this congressman, former student, came in, asked for time from the chairman, and corrected the record. I don't see that kind of courage from many people.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of grief, to be nice about that, because the chair of the committee, who's no longer a member of Congress, then came down and berated me some more. It made the news. It was crazy. So it's just a hard time for people to figure out how to work together. But I think the work you do on the ground, the work you do in communities, and just the nature of the core, the diverse interests, races, ethnicities, experiences that you bring are the way to start to build a different mentality about people, about the ability of people to help each other, to help their communities. And I think slowly that will sink in. Right now it's just a very, very difficult time. I think we all know why it's a difficult time. And hopefully this election will correct that. But beyond that, what you do as core members in your communities, to help communities, to ask where you can help their communities, not just come in and say, I'm from the core and I'm here to help you. Makes all the difference in the world. And I've seen it many, many, many times. There's somebody way in the back.
Hey, my name's Ash, she, they pronouns. I'm from Eastern Sierra Conservation Corps. This is less of a question, more of a comment to add to this discussion. I want to first say that America is actually a nation built on stolen land, on the backs of enslaved people, stolen from their land. I would also like to add that being a Corps member 11 years ago was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I came from an upper middle class Republican household, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it opened my eyes to what's actually going on. I want to add that I am currently still part of the Conservation Corps community because I believe in it and I love it, and I think that we need to serve our country and our brothers and our sisters. But at the end of the day, most Corps members are still being paid unlivable wages, and we are basically using and exploiting Black, brown, Indigenous, queer, trans bodies to continue to do the work that we can't get funding for while our country is currently assisting and aiding and being okay with a genocide that isn't just a humanitarian crisis but also a climate crisis, and we need to be discussing that if we're going to talk about a climate core. So thank you, and let's start talking about this and not just resting on our own privileges and laurels. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Any objections? Hearing none? Yes, sir.
I'm Derek Crandall again, and my question is, if you had a choice between being on a NBC Evening News or getting 10 influencers on special media to be your advocates for an idea, do you think there's clearly the evidence that we should invest time and energy on one of those two? Do you think they're both channels to success for the core movement?
I mean, if you had, I don't know why you have to choose. You don't have to choose, but if you did have to choose, I would choose the 10 on social. I mean, it's just, you know.
Derek, only people our age watch the evening news,
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
You know, they'll do a nice package, they'll do a nice job with it, it is worth doing, it reaches an audience. Look, it's not like local news matters the most if you're looking at news. That's what most people watch. It's not as big a numbers as it used to be, but it's still the most of any news source. For 18 to 35, it's TikTok. And then television. Local news actually weirdly spans most generations. It still gets a lot of eyeballs. And then cable and the nets, they hit an older audience. They hit a 45 and up, and it's dwindling. And I'm more interested in investing in people telling their own stories, that's going to reach a younger audience because that's what you're trying to build here. And it just builds a great, story bank.
Yes, sir.
Greg Michael from Onondaga Earth Corps in Syracuse. Our Corps has primarily been funded with local resources for the last 20 years. And we are going to be a recipient of some of the urban and community forestry funds through the IRA, which we're really excited about. One of the questions we had for American Forests and the U.S. Forest Service is, come fall, if there's a change in tides, kind of what's the risk assessment with that? And I know many of you in the audience have dealt with the ebbs and flows and changes as you mentioned. But as a Corps that's never kind of dealt with that, I'm curious kind of what suggestions you have or advice you have for kind of risk management for Corps that are dependent on some of this funding and the tides may change.
Well, I would say based on past history that if a certain individual from New York gets elected, you're probably going to see the urban funding decline precipitously. You've already seen what the Biden.
Assuming that Republicans also control Congress.
It's true, but if you're
talking about in Central New York, in our district.
Well, no, I mean at the national level. I mean overall funding for the Forest Service and how that's going to impact their ability to allocate funds. That's the big problem. I think the Forest Service, I'm proud to say I wrote the authority for the Urban and Community Forestry Program decades ago, and then when I got in, we built the program, and it's been wildly successful and connected people in urban and suburban environments. You're very suburban, to trees, the outdoors. I think it was a very positive experience. There's all kinds of data on the success of the program. It's one of those things where based on that alone, public health benefits, one would hope that would continue, but these are the things, I think many of us worry about in terms of, future funding.
And how you diversify your support, if you can diversify support within, with other, it's local?
It's very
Most
local.
of our program is locally funded.
Yeah.
So now
Now you also have, that was your baseline, and now you have like, oh, no.
Well, provided,
Right.
yeah, provided you can hang on to your baseline, you'll be in good shape. But I would hope that there'll be more opportunities for funding at the federal level, across a number of programs, not just the urban and community forestry program.
Syracuse?
Yeah, just south of Circus.
If you could get, there's probably Republicans in the area that you could, I would try to recruit to support. And I know that there's already an effort around to have a, bipartisan effort to protect some of the things in the IRA now to, so that there's a constituent, so there's like some kind of baseline support for that if it's gets attacked next year. And as much as you can do to have there be bipartisan awareness of your work, local, state, federal level, whatever you can do, those people can become advocates for you if there's a change.
Yeah. Just one other point about urban forestry. People think about urban forestry and say it's nice to see this, street trees or regreening, but the health and safety benefits, the recreation benefits, the values in terms of communities, home values, et cetera. All those are important selling points to convince constituents, regardless of party, that, hey, this is an investment that's helping your neighbors and your constituents. Yes, sir, right there.
Hi there, Sandy Scott with AmeriCorps. The semi-quincentennial, did I say that right? It's coming up. And just when you think about, when they said about the National Park Service being America's greatest idea and service being so fundamental to character of our country, how can Corps take advantage, or how should they think about the 250th anniversary? And do you see that as an opportunity, and what ways could Corps be planning for that?
I'm distracted because I think I worked with you like 20 or 30 years ago. I was like, wait, I know that voice. Bruce
I'm glad
Vento?
you said that.
Did you work for Bruce Vento? Isn't that amazing?
When you said I'm distracted and looked at him, I was like, oh my God.
I was like, oh my gosh, I know this guy, and I know that voice. And where are you? Are you in Minnesota? No, okay. Oh, okay. He's legendary Sandy Scott. I was like, wait, oh my gosh, yeah. I would be so nervous. I was like, nervous to talk to him, nervous to talk to you. Well, because these are, they were the committee staff, and if you work for a congressman, the committee staff is the ones that control everything. And
Which committee?
Yeah, we had like a lot of
We crossed paths then.
Yeah.
We crossed paths. Oh,
Yes.
That's when we worked together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that, okay, so the 250th, I think that's like.
It's a great opportunity.
That is a great opportunity. And it's kind of there for the taking, because I don't think that it is, like, I'm sure that will be fraught, right? Ash spoke about, like there's a lot of conflict about country's beginnings and what's happening now. And that's, that can be I could see this being, there could be a lot of conflict around it. And
or it could be a period of enlightenment.
Yeah, right. I'm sure that will be part of it too. So I think getting in early to raise your hand and, just starting to organize around it, right? I guess is Interior the thing? Is that who's doing this right now? If it's a federal government thing at all?
There's a commission.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah. Because I don't think I haven't heard of anybody getting into that space. And I think if you, Yeah, but it's just not like, but on the outside, and people, and then you have such a good community of youth to be part of that. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Have we?
There's some of them that.
Oh, I thought we exhausted them.
So, kind of related to these other conversations about bipartisanship. So, we've always positioned our Corps as bipartisan, been very successful with what you're talking about, right? Speak to local issues, speak to the data, everybody supports it. The American Climate Corps feels different. And so like Inflation Reduction Act, Build Back Better, yeah, we didn't talk to the Republicans about it for a week and then they forgot about it because the next thing happened. And now they seem to be just like, don't take that money, don't talk about that, we'll make a big issue out of it. How long do you think before the next thing just overshadows that and we can start working on this?
You want to take?
So again, I do think there's, and some other work that I'm doing, there's a group that they formed called Invest in Our Lands. And if you look at the website, I think this is a good example of what to do. They went out and interviewed farmers and ranchers that are benefits of the conservation program, and all different kinds of states, represented all parties, all different kinds of demographics, and to do a very nonpartisan defense of it. And I think that you could do the same kind of effort where it's just, there's money behind this thing. So just for people who want to preserve the programs. So they're like, everything's beautifully shot and, it looks like an episode of Yellowstone or something, minus the gore. And, but you can do that even just with, your own videos and your own content. But I would form something like that makes it, and that it has, it's not a partisan thing, but it's like telling the story of what actually is happening here. And you might get Republicans that'll buy into it. You don't have to even call it the Climate Corps, right? Just to protect that. I think that you need a similar effort to protect that money.
Well, I think if you build a community of supporters for that in your community and invite the congressman out to be a part of that, I think many of them will find a way to be a part of that because they want to get reelected. So that helps a lot. I mean, I understand the verbiage and language and the symbolism and elected representatives get elected by communities. And so the more you can engage the community and, convince people, it's about tree planting. It's about improving our environment. I don't give a damn what it's called. It's going to help our community. I think you'll convince a lot of people. In Washington, they'll gripe about it. But back home, if you're, patting them on the back and saying, hey, we really appreciate this. You've made a big difference for us. The community really appreciates it. It makes a difference. All politics is local in the end.
And that's why this group is called Invest in Our Land and not like conservation or not, it's just to try to be as neutral as possible and have it be a story bank for people that are benefiting from this. And, you could do something, it's a good idea probably to do something similar here.
Yes, sir. We'll keep going until you say stop, so.
Yeah, it says we have bad news for everyone because it says we still have 75 minutes.
And it hasn't changed at all, so.
Jim and I have no idea what time it actually is.
Break out the drinks. Go ahead.
There's probably people looking around going, I wish you did not give this guy the microphone, but I do have a question. I get what you're saying about talking to our reps, and I'm going to be talking to our rep tomorrow. He oversees a district where most of the national parks and most of the national forests exist within his district. And
where are you from?
Michigan.
Oh.
Yeah, right. So
where in Michigan?
What I'm about to say, but this person has been on our projects multiple times over the last 6 or whatever number of years he's been in office. And he still thinks that the insurrection was, people visiting the Capitol for a tour. So the reality is some of these people are just batshit crazy, and I don't know how do you talk to batshit crazy? And I guess if you can give me pointers on
I do that. I mean, I do that.
You have to, but how?
I do that, and I do find if it's I don't there can't be. Oh my God.
She married me. She's able to talk to anybody.
Yeah. there can't be any judgment. There can't be any, it's got to be, you can't tell them you're wrong for not supporting what we're trying to do here. Just to try. I mean, some people just don't. I mean, my experience is that there is some way to connect, but some people just are, it sounds like this, you've tried this, and that's just not working. And then you need to, then it's like, I mean, you have senators, you have, like, what about other local Republicans that could become advocates and you're building up that way, or some other?
They're all scared. They're all scared about saying.
Yep.
Standing up and looking as though they're somehow being in the middle.
I mean, your state is very polarized. I know a lot about it. It's very polarized. It's very tough. Yeah, I know that is like particularly electrified right now.
Because of what is happening in the Middle East, I can tell you that. I mean, 100,000 Arabs live in the Detroit area.
Yeah.
It's going to make a difference. And my wife is one of them. She's Palestinian, and they're going to be, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I know. So that is, I mean, sometimes it just doesn't, I mean, and that is when I'm, that's when I'm deferred. Then that's when you're going back to, like, all right, we're telling our own story. We're using our own channels and we're telling our own story. If there's not any elected official that's gonna, I mean, they're a lagging indicator, right? So you can build, but I do think, back to like what I said at the beginning about the lack of trust that people have in institutions, and if the people who are participating in your institution have faith and trust in it, that is something to build on, and that is a valuable thing, even if your conversations and your advocacy is having to happen outside of like the normal government circles.
I would still invite him to your event if you have an event, and say, look, makes a difference in our community, and we wish you could be more supportive, and leave it at that. I mean,
even state reps. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time with Republicans. Like, I get that. Like, you're only going to get a few nationally would be great, but like even state representatives, state senators, that kind of thing in Michigan.